Welcome to the sixth edition of the Hirist Tech Talks. And my name is Zubhoir. I'm a part of the marketing function at Hirist.com. And I'm extremely delighted to have you all join us today, right on time at 3 p.m. guys. Some of you guys are here for our last few webinars, and some of you guys are here for the first time. If you'd like to check what you missed in the earlier episodes, I'll share the YouTube link. I'll share the YouTube links in the chat box. So guys, today we have the pleasure of conducting the sixth edition of the series in collaboration with the tech leadership at KPMG. Atul Gupta, who's the head IT advisory at KPMG, and Sachin Arora, partner and head of Lighthouse Analytics, AI and data at KPMG, will be leading this session today. Guys, Atul has more than 22 years of experience in providing technology consulting services, and he's really passionate about cyber and technology. And he's contributed significantly to a wide range of industries, which includes telecom, financial services, and technology. Whereas, guys, Sachin is a technologist and a thought leader with in-depth knowledge and expertise in the field of information technology. And he has an extraordinary experience of more than 17 years with some of the leading organizations of the world, like Amazon, Oracle, Yahoo, McKinsey and Company. So guys, today they will be sharing their thoughts on the topic microservices, containers in cloud app development and ethical hacking. So before we start, I request all of you to post all the questions that you have in the Q&A box on the right hand side corner. The chat box is disabled, guys. So please make sure that you put in all your questions in the Q&A box. Atul and Sachin will be taking as many questions as possible towards the end of the webinar. We received some really high volume of questions over email as well while you guys were registering for this event. And we'll also try to take most of those. So without any further ado, guys, I think we should get right into the topic of discussion at hand. So over to you guys.
Okay, hi, good afternoon, everyone. And Vipul, thank you so much for giving that introduction. It's a pleasure to have this conversation with each one of you today. And as Vipul was referring, both me and Sachin, while we'll talk upon and share our perspectives, but we'll be very keen to address the questions which are there. And some of the questions which have already come in has already set the momentum going. So as Vipul talked upon, I've done 20 years with KPMG, a true blue blood consultant, and a consultant cannot shy away from not using Microsoft PowerPoint. So here I have a few slides with which I'll get started upon, and I promise we'll keep slides to the minimal, but I felt it is important that we get started upon just to talk upon who we are from a KPMG perspective, and then we can pick the conversation from there on. So KPMG, most of you may be aware, it's globally one of the big four organizations which provides services in areas which are multiple, but advisory is one of the biggest focus area. And that's where both me and Sachin really comes in from. And in India, we've been providing services for 27 years across multiple cities, multiple offices, and with a very large staff which we have got across in the country. So some quick perspectives on KPMG at a glance. If you can see over here, we started ourselves in 1993. I've been on the journey since 2000 with KPMG, very young organization at that point of time, and we still continue to be young organization, extremely young at heart. Our average age of our teams are extremely young, and that drives in a lot of passion, energy, innovation in all what we do. So when you get to see 14,000 plus total staff in India, the bulk of those are contributed from millennials, and we really look forward to constantly engage more and more with millennials and the next generation as well now to keep our energy levels right up there. We focus quite extensively on diversity and inclusiveness. That's one of the key focus areas, not just for us in India, but globally. And that's why you get to see a good percentage of gender diversity which comes across. And we pretty much spread across the country, north, west, south, and east. And today we work across with clients which are representing pretty much across all the sectors, across all parts of the country. There have been a lot of accolades which have been provided to KPMG in India because of the focus that we bring across to our employees. And those recognitions obviously give us a lot of pride, whether it's a recognition coming in across for being best employer for women, or there are recognition coming across for top companies to be working in the country, looking across for millennials, and so on and so forth. I think that's all what goes back to help us realize that we've been doing the right things for the teams that we have been onboarding upon. And here is an opportunity where we are coming across to unleash ourselves in newer areas and onboard more and more skills and provide them each of those skills that kind of an experience, which is truly KPMG experience. As I mentioned, we work across industries, and you get to see all the industries which are listed down over here where we operate. Some industries we have very, very significant focus, and many others, the focus is building upon at this point of time. It's also dependent on the macroeconomical and microeconomical factors which are running upon. With COVID-19, all of us have gone through. There have been reprioritization, which the world has seen, and including India has gone through that kind of a reprioritization, which obviously brings in a differentiated focus across industries. But what really comes across very core to us, and that's why both me and Sachin are here, is technology. And we'll be talking much more about it from a digital landscape and how digital is being focused upon in India. That's what I wanted to bring across, saying how KPMG is organized and where are Sachin and Atul really coming in from. So you'll get to hear a lot of terminologies being used for KPMG, but essentially both me and Sachin come in from advisory, and advisory has got multiple sub-services, and both me and Sachin come in from digital solutions within advisory. Now, digital today is a solution group which provides end-to-end solutions, what organizations are looking forward to do on their digital agenda, whether that's about using digital technologies, whether that's about using emerging tech, which is coming across in the form of IoTs, or enhancing the cloud adoption, which is happening. Looking back at the technology landscape, application landscape, and saying how can it be digitized and how can it be made available on the new channels which are available today and being used upon quite widely by consumers and stakeholders. Also going on to the other extreme, which is saying huge data which is being generated by using of digital technologies, how do you create value out of the data? And that's where data and analytics really becomes a very, very strong focus area, which is where Lighthouse is a solution that we call within KPMG, and we provide extensive services. And with all of this adoption of technology comes across creating an environment of trust, which is embodied with cybersecurity, data privacy, and data protection. And that's another area where we operate upon, and I lead that solution within KPMG in India. So as I said, I'll stop over here. It's a quick background and an introduction which we wanted to give so that each one of you know where we are coming in from KPMG. And I'll switch it over to Sachin now. Sachin, you want to come in and talk through on all these new technologies which everyone is so keen to talk upon at this moment.
Thanks, Atul, and thanks, Vibhor. And Atul, you've set up a very good background about what we do at KPMG. And of course, Atul is a long-standing, member of the firm, and he's been there for a long time. I'm somewhat a recent addition to the team. I was hired in KPMG a year and a half back, or a little less than a year and a half back. I was earlier heading analytics and big data for Amazon Web Services in India. AWS is one of the big cloud providers globally, and equally so in India and the SAARC region. So I was heading the practice for analytics and big data there. So we're going to talk about today a lot about cloud. We're also going to talk about some of your questions that we have heard from before coming in, that of course have set up some momentum. But we will also try to keep up some time to take some real-time Q&A questions towards the end. So again, I'm going to take forward the presentation from you, Atul. I know we do have presentations for everything, being consultants. But yes, I'll try to kind of move around fast and focus more on the technology slides that we had. But just before that, I'll give some background of who we are as a team. So just give me a second. I'll pop in the slides. All right. So the Lighthouse team in KPMG is a global phenomena. It's all about new age technologies like cloud, machine learning, AI, data, intelligent automation. low code and new code tools and practices. All of those tools and technologies put together forms Lighthouse. And majority of the work that we do for our clients are setting up cloud ecosystems, cloud data lakes, you know, doing machine learning and AI. So it's more or less a born in cloud practice within KPMG is what I can confidently talk about. Just at a high level picture, we're a large team, and of course, growing 50% year on year. Of course, we have people who are certified in different cloud providers, whether it's Google Cloud, AWS, Azure. Of course, we work with AWS, GCP, Cloudera, Microsoft, Click, and different tools and technologies with different types of customers, Indian customers, global customers, and there are some of the reference customers I mentioned on the slide. So definitely are recognized leader in the Forrester and Gartner 2x2 metrics. Some of the projects that we do for our client is doing data strategy, cloud strategy, setting up the cloud data lakes and data warehousing platforms, doing some data visualization related work with narratives around the dashboards, and keep finding out how to really transform the KPIs within an organization. Also a strong practice with a lot of PhDs and statistics guys in our advanced analytics and machine learning and AI practice. Over and above, we are also a very mature practice when it comes to process analytics. I'm going to talk about that a little later in these slides. What is process analytics? So there are processes in an organization, like procurement to payment and hiring. All different types of functions within a company are processes. And what one of our tools does very nice is basically forms the digital traces between, or kind of ingest the digital traces left behind by every process, and do an analytics on top of that on how each of these processes can be optimized to do things even better. So this is largely the solution themes that we work around. And then we have, as I said, large practice around machine learning and AI folks. It's not just, this team is not just present in India. This has a global presence. There's a lighthouse, which is there in US region. The lighthouse, we are actually the third biggest lighthouse, as if I can call it. The second biggest being the Germany one, and the first is the US, and third is India. And then, of course, the pace that we are growing in terms of number of people, we will definitely grow even bigger from where we are today. So that's just from the background perspective. We have created a lot of tools and assets within this practice, which we take it to our customers. We have created platforms which helps you or helps any customer set up a data lake on cloud. There is a self-service transformation, change data capture, ingestion, and a lot of those tools upfront created. We have also created a digital signal insight platform, which is which calculates the risk in any organization have on an online world. So it scraps all the data which is publicly available into the platform, and gives an organization the online risk that they may be carrying. Like one of our biggest customers is India's one of the biggest e-commerce companies, and they really find out if a lot of other fraud players are running with the same name, with a different suffix on their names, and they kind of lure the customers to kind of do some shopping on their website. So all this risk which is present on an online space for an organization, digital signal insight platform is able to capture and provide the actionable insight to an organization and what they can do. We also have a recommender lab setup, which is forward-looking investment within the practice to come out with new machine learning related tools and products. So they do create a lot of assets within an organization. So I'll just change the slides. I know we really want to dive a little more technical, so I'll take an example of how are we building cloud data lakes on for our customers. So just let me allow me to switch slides in a different direction so that I can come to. Okay, so before I jump to the data lake slide, I really want to spend a few minutes on this slide, which talks about how the data and machine learning and AI platforms have been coming about since last 20 years, and we all know, we have all known OLTP and transaction systems, which is the tier one of the platform that I've shown. They were needed all the time to record transactions, to log important entries into an ERP systems, and they needed to be consistent. They needed to be I would say asset compliant. Asset is atomicity, consistency, isolation, durability, compliant databases, so that there is no loss of a record once you punch in and when you edit the records, and there are not two copies of the same data different people are working upon. So they were created with the transaction processing in mind. But as the need moved towards the greed, we came up with more data warehousing solutions like Teradata and Netiza or Oracle data warehouses that you may have heard. These are column-oriented data warehouses, not keeping the record-wise data, but the column-wise data. And they kind of did a great job for a lot of customers for a long period of time until cloud came. Now, when the cloud came, we started ingesting data from different sources, which are not traditional record-based, row column-based kind of databases. And then we kept getting data from disparate different sources, which a regular RDBMS or a data warehouse was not capable of keeping. Cloud really helped in a form that it gives you an opportunity to segregate compute and storage separately and allow you to grow and create large data lakes. So we're going to dive a little deep on a data lake example. So this slide will talk about a little more on the technology side, on how data lake platforms that KPMG India is creating for a lot of our clients. On the extreme left hand side, if you look at it in an organization, the different types of databases or data sources. On the top left hand side, you see RDBMSs, ERS, ERPs and CRMs. So this is like the classical data that you're aware of. On the bottom side of it, you would see the new age data, the CCTV, the unstructured documents, the IoT device, the fast streaming data that an organization may have. So all this is the data that a company is interested in, and they want to form a collective data lake. A data lake is actually a place where you have all the data from all different sources within an organization, so that you can combine any two or three or four different types of data to form a business insight or be able to do machine learning. Now, to be able to do this at scale on, let's say, AWS or a Google Cloud or an Azure Cloud, you need to bring this data into a data lake, which is what we call a raw stage, where we bring the data either in a batch form or real-time form. You see the real-time is mentioned as CDC, and CDC means change data capture. So every time your source data changes, the incremental data flows into your data lake. And then you once you get the data in the raw format, you need to run some transformations, create the data catalog, move towards curated. And like business users can't drink data from a lake, they need a bottle of water to be able to take inside. The analogy that I'm trying to give, what bottle of water is to a lake, which means insight to a large form of data, is what a data warehouse is to a data platform here. A data warehouse is a bottle of water, ingestible insight, where customers can build their visualization engines and try to kind of create their reporting, while the same data is accessible for AI services, to build machine learning based insights and run algorithms on the same data. And data lake allows you to do that. So if you really look at this lake example, you have data coming in from databases, you have transformation happening on the same data, you have reports which are getting collected from the same data, and you also have machine learning and AI happening on the same data. While we do not want to ignore the real-time data coming in from the new age data sources, so using systems like Apache Kafka, Amazon Kinesis, Google PubSub services, you ingest data, put that data also in the data lake, and then you can create this whole data lake kind of a platform, which is ingesting data to building insights for an organization. So obviously, this is not possible if the system is not 100% secure, because one of the biggest concern our customers have when they start this conversation, that how safe my data is on cloud. And of course, Atul will cover later part of the session today that how some of the cybersecurity, how's the cloud security that assets and tools that we have created within KPMG helps the customers to remain safe and secure while they build their data platforms on cloud. I'll move ahead and share the services that we use. We for the ingestion, for the collection and storage, for doing data modeling and doing the BI and analytics on top of that. These are some of the tools that we use. Happy to take any questions towards the end when in the Q&A session. This is a sample architecture based on the same thing that we talked about, using the Azure stack, where you see Azure Data Factory as the ETL engine. You see the Azure Databricks, Azure Cognitive Services in the machine learning, the Synapse service that they have as a data warehouse. We have a very similar data structure and platform for AWS, for that matter, where we do a very similar thing. The tools get replaced by their cousins in the clouds world, but like Amazon Glue is the ETL, and then they use Amazon Redshift or SageMaker as their the AI tool. So the tools keep on changing, but the architecture across the cloud remains the same. So that was just to give you a brief background about the type of exciting work that we do for our clients, building up data platforms, building up AI services. And we have a lot of customers, like we are doing one of the biggest cloud implementation for biggest passenger vehicle company in India, passenger vehicle making company in India, and they're doing like use cases like spare part forecasting, service load forecasting for their services station. So every time you take it your car to service, you would see the peak load is usually around the weekends and in the morning, and during the weekdays afternoon, these service stations are usually idle. So running some algorithms to say what kind of campaigns can we run to kind of keep our workshops open all through the week and profitably so. So we work with our customers, increase their top line, consolidate their bottom line, averse them from the risk of losing data, and of course creating a better customer experience, what they can create further down to their end customers. So I'll take a pause here and pass on to Atul for some of the cybersecurity related or the digital trust related inputs, and then happy to jump on to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Sachin. And let me pick it up from where you have talked upon so far. Actually, it's going to be a bit of a challenge for me because you took it to a very high level. But let me talk upon from a cyber perspective. So moving forward, and when we all heard saying there's so much opportunity which technology is bringing across to us, and what all can we do using technology. But one of the things which keeps the chief executives of the organizations, global organizations, giving them sleepless nights is cybersecurity. And we do, as KPMG, global surveys on cyber executives, and consistently from 2016 to 2019, cybersecurity emerged as the top 5 risk. 2020 obviously was a very different year, and we actually performed the survey during that phase as well. And if you look upon, there were two views which emerged, pre-pandemic and the learnings from pandemic. And cyber has continued to be there in both of those areas. And if you really get to see on the right side, that is what World Economic Forum had come upon from a 2020 perspective, saying what's some of the key risks which organizations or entities have to deal with for next 10 years. So this is a forecast which World Economic Forum gives across, not a forecast, a report which World Economic Forum gives across for a decade. And cyber attacks and information infrastructure breakdown continues to be right over there amongst many other areas which are there. So clearly cyber security has moved a significant notches up from the attention which the management is getting onto it today, as well as the boards and the senior leadership is getting on. We are seeing the narratives in cyber changing quite consistently. The focus initially used to be around confidentiality, whereas now the focus is moving on being resilient. Everyone is realizing cyber attacks are a reality. So how do you be resilient to withstand those attacks? The focus, which was, saying upon, let's try to prevent it. Now the focus is moving on to saying, while you do prevention and detection, but being prepared to respond to it is becoming very fundamental. Initially, it was thought that cyber attacks would result in loss of data, and that definitely happens. But the attention is now moving towards saying it's not just loss of data, it's loss of competitive advantage. And eventually, in the digital economy that we are operating today, cyber trust is becoming a key enabler for growth of organization. So the narratives have changed quite significantly, and it's also coming back on what the global CEOs are saying, including the India chief executives of the top organizations were saying. It clearly catapults cybersecurity at a very different level than what it has been in past. As KPMG, we have been focused on it. And if you really see, this is what Forrester has come across. Consistently, KPMG has been rated amongst the leaders globally on providing cybersecurity services. And we take a lot of pride in maintaining the view which analyst brings across to us how KPMG has been focusing on taking cybersecurity services. Just a quick reflection on the team that we have in India. We've been providing cybersecurity services in various forms and shapes for 18 years now in India. So we started somewhere around 2002, 2003. It used to be called Information Technology Security Services. Then it became Information Security Management Services. And now in the current avatar is known as Cybersecurity Services. It's a fairly large team, as you can see, and we operate across various elements on cyber, which is helping organization build the strategy, helping them to transform the complete cyber posture, which is actually using technologies, including cloud and digital technologies, focusing on enhancing the defense, where ethical hackers play an extremely important role. And you'll get to see that we already have a team composition of 150 plus professionals who are doing ethical hacking on an ongoing basis. And the last but not the least is providing response when things go really wrong. And this all is bundled along with a comprehensive end-to-end managed services to make sure that we are not providing services to our client organization just as a one time, but actually help them to go through this cyber risk on an ongoing basis. There have been a lot of investments which we have made because this is an area which is so dynamic. And unless you create those kind of labs, you create those kind of centers, you're not going to learn from it. So we created cybersecurity labs, forensic labs, as well as running a 24/7 center, the security operations centers. And what that really gives us is an ability to work with leading global as well as Indian organizations. And a lot of tools have been created in the process, which is not just helping us to bring in efficiency, but actually taking this entire to the next level and how it's progressing upon. So that's a quick snapshot in terms of what we do. And I talked upon on these 4 areas where we focus quite extensively. This is where we just wanted to give you an overview how cyber services portfolio really emerges. So the first pillar, which is called strategy and governance, focuses on helping building the cybersecurity frameworks, doing risk assessments, doing compliance assessments, helping build KPIs, helping looking at third-party risk, data privacy, cyber dashboarding, and so on and so forth. One of the important elements which has started emerging over here in strategy and governance today is the big adoption on digital channels which has happened. So as Sachin was talking, the cloud becoming a reality, how do you go about updating your cybersecurity framework to make sure that cloud can be adopted in a controlled and a secure environment? There's always an apprehension of using a public cloud vis-a-vis a private cloud or a hybrid cloud. But there are use cases where public cloud is as effective or it is more economical as well, vis-a-vis having something established on your own. But you need to make sure that there's a right cybersecurity framework around it to be enabling it operating in a controlled environment. So strategy and governance, which used to be focused on very global frameworks like ISO 27001, NIST cybersecurity framework, is now increasingly moving around with the Cloud Security Alliance, CSA, cybersecurity guidelines which have emerged upon from CSA, and equally relevant standards and frameworks which are coming from most of the digital technologies, especially in the world of Industry 4.0. Then as I talked upon, the second pillar is cyber transformation. This is the pillar which actually focuses on transforming cyber using technologies. One of the biggest issues the world has realized in the pandemic scenario is how do you establish identity? And that's an area which is not really solved upon. Identity and access has become the biggest challenge which globally everyone is finding answers to. And there are no one single answer which can help you. There are multiple providers which are here. They're providing solutions around identity access. As KPMG, we help organizations find the right answers and actually help them walk the journey. And similarly, we do a whole lot of elements around security operations and management, completely on cloud-based security operations and management using SOAR technologies is fundamental today. Data is becoming extremely critical, extremely important. How do you make sure data is protected adequately? Is a key area which goes into cyber transformation. And again, whole lot of clients where we operate upon. Cyber defense is where you help organization defend against cyber attacks. And that's where a lot of vulnerability assessments, penetration testing, ethical hacking skills really come across. This has been a solution which has been very long lasting solution for us, but constantly increasing. Newer technologies are bringing in newer use cases for us to evaluate, to operate upon. 5G is on anvil, and we are already looking upon on 5G cyber defense or cyber security setups to be looked upon, connected devices, IoT devices, and so on and so forth are areas which we are looking upon. And there are very unique use cases which are emerging within healthcare. And if not managed well, it can be the impact or consequences could be very, very different consequences. And that's where the focus is really moving at this point of time on cyber defense. And the last one is when things really go wrong, an incident does occur, is helping organizations to overcome those incidents through cyber response. It's more focused on actually providing a response service when an attack is on. And the year gone by, we've dealt with some very, very complex incidents because that's how the pandemic really came in, where everyone was working from home. It opened up opportunities for attackers to really penetrate in, and that gave us also an opportunity to support a lot of our organizations to go through that response phase and help them to come out of those response through those incidents. It's all pivoted. If you see on the bottom, it's all pivoted on cloud, mobility as channels, IoT, intelligent automation, as well as blockchain, and many more new services which are emerging at this, technologies which are emerging at this point of time. Two of the areas which I just wanted to highlight where there is a lot of focus at this point of time. One is obviously cloud security. A lot of assets have been created in this space by KPMG. When I say assets, I imply these are the platforms which are helping organizations to secure cloud in a more effective and a very agile manner. The first and the foremost area where we have realized most of the organizations get challenged using cloud is having a posture analysis of cloud from a security perspective. Given there are so many services which an organization can subscribe today from cloud, having a single pane of view is the most difficult challenge which organizations do come across. And that's where we have created an asset which helps organization to bring everything together. It's already available at this point of time on Azure, and now we are extending it for AWS to make sure that every client, every organization who's using combination or being individually on Azure stroke AWS, they can have a good comprehensive view of their security posture and accordingly take decisions over there. And the journey is constantly growing in this area on cloud security because there are newer and newer concepts which are emerging, and technology is also enabling newer abilities to be taken across in cloud security. Data privacy and protection has been another key area where in last 2 years, the world has seen the needle moving very significantly. So Sachin talked upon on how data can be brought together from different sources, structured, unstructured, semi-structured to create value. But at the same point of time, there are a lot of obligations when you create value out of data to make sure data is protected adequately and privacy of data is maintained upon. This is driven by regulations. India is on the cusp of having a data privacy bill or data privacy act. And once that act comes in force, India will be one of those few countries globally which will have data privacy acts, and every organization will have obligation, strong obligation on making sure that there are right data privacy and protection mechanisms. This is again an area where we have been creating a lot of platforms because relatively new area. But as you all will appreciate, and Sachin was demonstrating, data is across everywhere. Everything that we do is generating data. And if anyone has to protect that entire value chain of data, it sounds to be an impossible task. And that's where the focus is really how do you bring in technology to identify what you need to protect, and then you effectively go out and protect upon. So those are the emerging areas which we are operating upon at this point of time. There are multiple clients which we are operating upon, but this just gives a bird's eye view of where we operate. And we'll be happy, and I know as both me and Sachin said, we'll be happy to get onto some questions now because we're wrapping up. I just wanted to close by saying that, you know, KPMG is driven by very, very strong global values and culture. We stand by our value system, which is defined by the 5 key values, starting from integrity, very, very core to us in whatever we do. Excellence, that's fundamental, making sure that everything that we provide upon excellence is ingrained in it. We bring across a lot of courage and doing newer things. You would have heard Sachin talking. I have also alluded to those areas, saying that how can we be the ones who can disrupt the industry? How can we be the ones who can act boldly? But at the same point of time, we bring in a strong value of inclusiveness or togetherness. Diversity and inclusiveness is fundamental to us again, and we bring everyone together. And eventually, we want this entire social environment in which we operate to be better. And that's why our last value over there is to be better or for better. That takes me to our agenda on corporate citizenship. We do a whole lot of things in corporate citizenship. Year gone by 2020, when you could not do it physically, we were able to find newer ways of how this could be done at this point of time as well. Well, that really brings me to an end of the slides, and happy to pick up the questions which are coming up at this point of time. So Vibhor, I look forward to you.
Yeah, yeah. So so thank you guys, thank you Atul and Sachin. We have some really great questions lined up, and I'll get right to them. Right. So the first question that we got was, does a single microservice maintain separate database for that microservice, and what are the pros and cons of this data strategy?
Okay, so I'll take that question. The whole concept of microservices is to break functions into multiple parts, and then be able to be responsible for that little work that microservice is supposed to do. So the database is actually agnostic of the microservice. So you could have one database and thousands of microservices on top of that, because database is a persistent storage of data. Microservice is a finite amount of work that the business logic that microservices is supposed to do. So different types of microservices could rely on the same database, which is a collection of tables and records in it. So I would say having a separate microservice and the having the same microservice attached with every database separately is not a good strategy. You should become quite comfortable to have a fewer databases, or at least the ones that you need, and then you can create microservices. And a simple microservice is a finite amount of work that you want a microservice is supposed to do. So attaching the database close to microservices all the time separately is perhaps not the best technical strategy.
So the next question that we have is that everyone knows about SQL injection, but what are the measures? What measures does one need to have in place to ensure no one writes code that's vulnerable to SQL injection?
It typically happens in most B2C applications, where you could inject infinite loops of queries, and then can kind of get into the CPU consumption of the servers if the query never ends and hogs on all the compute and storage related cycles that the machines has in the background. The best way to really loop into is to quickly bring in, not really have a two-tier system. A two-tier system is subject to the highest amount of any sort of injection, for that matter. SQL injection is one example. And then the best way to mitigate such injections is to have a middle tier, which is the customer interfacing application to the database, something which is a little bit more brain sitting in the center, evaluating the intent of the query, not necessarily serving it like a slave. Right. And there are many and more open source tools and technologies which have been written. We have done so equally for our clients when we build B2C applications, that quickly checks the intent of the query before really submitting it for an injection, or to, for that matter, execution to our database system. So that middle tier is very, very important to evaluate the intent of the execution. And if it is going to run into circular loops and hog CPU and the memory of the database systems, kill it at that very moment. Of course, fraudsters still find better ways to keep on coming, but that just keeps us agile to come up with one mitigation at a time.
Yeah, I'll just add to that a very fair point, Sachin, what he mentioned. From a security perspective, SQL injection has come out to be one of the easiest ways for hackers to break into applications. And increasingly, DevOps is the way how most of the industry is moving forward. Security being put in by design is one of the objectives or one of the answers to this challenge, and doing it manually is becoming extremely challenging. So the point which Sachin highlighted on tools being available, automation tools being available, and how you embed it as part of the dev cycle. So that as the coder is developing an application, there is a check which is happening simultaneously to identify if there's anything which can create an injection, or maybe not just injection. Injection is just one of the breaches which can happen from a security perspective. If you look at OWASP top 20 breaches, you'll find there's so many others, cross-site scripting and many others which can be done based on the way how the code is being written. So DevSecOps, where security is right in the center of development and operations, is a way how organizations are dealing with it. And it's called within the CI/CD pipeline to be integrated, the continuous integration and continuous development pipeline, where you integrate these security platforms now. And there are multiple which are available. But trust me, it's early days. We all are learning. We will keep on learning on these areas.
Great, great. Okay, so the next question is, in today's time, is multi-factor authentication enough to ensure better cloud computing security?
I think if there was one silver bullet, KPMG was out of profession. So unfortunately, there's no one single answer which gives comfort on saying whether you can get security out of it or not. Multi-factor authentication is a great way to enable and bring upon that confidence on the controls which can be deployed upon. But it's also dependent on how you're doing multi-factor authentication. I'll give you a very simple example in where the attackers are really going upon. Many times multi-factor authentication is linked with an OTP, and OTP travels on a telecom environment, which is using a SIGTRAN protocol where an SMS comes in. And attackers are today going on to a level where they're trying to breach that protocol as well, so that an OTP could be identified, or simply they're trying to get a mobile app downloaded so that by the time OTP reaches to you as an individual, that app can read that OTP and relay it back to the attacker. So while many of these MFAs, multi-factor authentications, are bringing in additional layer of security, but I know I talked upon being ready on cyber responses because the attacking community is also constantly keeping themselves ahead of the curve. So there's no one silver bullet, unfortunately.
Great. Okay, so the next question is, what are your views on Delta Lake and data mesh architectures?
I'll take that question. So, Delta Lake actually became slightly popular in the last couple of years by Databricks as an offering. The typical challenges with a classical data lake on cloud was edits and I would say updates. So when you write data to a data lake kind of a platform, it's very hard for subsequent updates to those data, because these are data platforms not built for updates. The warehouses platform, or for that matter even the cloud data lake platform like S3, or in Google Cloud Storage GCS, or in Azure ADLS2, which is Azure Data Lake Services generation 2. All of these platforms are not really meant for updates. They are meant for collecting large amount of insert data, because when you optimize a platform for updates, you're actually optimizing them for transactional processing, then the analytical processing. And hence, they kind of really do very bad in terms of updates as a classical case. But with the requirement and businesses being more hungry, they really want the data lake to be literally fresh as their iota copy of their transaction system every now and then. So every time source systems change, the data lake platforms should also embrace those change, do an updates accordingly, so they become quite mirror copies on a real time basis. This is the business need. So classic data lakes were not able to solve that. They were not able to solve the fast changing source systems and applying that to the analytical systems. So then Databricks found an opportunity called building up something called Delta Lake. Or Delta Lake, by the name says, every time the delta changes, the destination systems apply those changes. But they actually created a, I would say, somewhat a hack to be able to do so. So what they do, they don't really go and change the underlying data at all. So when you bring in, let's say, one record of data with, let's say, 50 columns in the source system, it comes to the analytical system. Now imagine 4 columns of that table got changed, or for that record got changed. Now when those changes that in the form of delta, when they come to the delta lake or the data lake, they don't really go and make the change in that record. They basically maintain a separate ledger where they say, okay, of this record 4 columns have changed, and it also becomes a separate record. Now for one record you actually have 2 records. One is your baseline and second is your ledger that you're maintaining. And let's say this record gets changed 50 times, you will have 1 plus 50 ledgers to maintain. And then there is a service which runs every hour, which crunches all those ledgers and finally go and make a change to your baseline. So it just kind of maintains all the changes as inserts, and every now and time, it just does a sync of all the changes that have happened in that duration of time and bring it back to one record. So that's the technology behind the Delta Lake offered by Databricks as a platform. It has done good job in the last some time. A lot of big companies I know, like Swiggy and Zomato and all of those, are using Delta Lake as a platform to ingest fast-moving data. There's an equivalent open source technology called Apache Hudi, which has come. So Delta Lake is a paid offering by, there's an open source as well as the paid offering by Databricks. But if you really want an alternate, which is completely free, there's a project done within Uber called Apache Hudi, which a lot of customers use free of cost. We use it a lot when we offer the Delta Lake related platforms to us. So happy about Delta Lake being today present? The answer is yes. So views is very positive. It was a business need which is solved, which is not solved by the classic data lakes. It has a lot of future ahead, and of course, it's still day one, as I keep saying. In this technology advancement, at some days, even the cloud providers will offer Delta Lake equivalents as the services embedded in them. So sorry for a little technical answer if that was the expectation of it, but very, very positive question, and of course a future of this technology in time to come.
Great. Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. So the next question that we have is, are there any readily available tools to migrate applications from legacy to microservices architecture?
Again, that would put us out of job, Vibhor, and the person who has asked this question. There isn't such silver bullets that exist today that few clicks and few interfaces, legacy application turns out to be a microservices one. I have created many microservices application in my past, and I tell you, um, breakdown doesn't even happen by technology. It happens by how you function as an organization or that particular business group. So a microservice is not a technological innovation, it's actually business innovation to be able to break down business into finite jobs and then creating a technology layer on top of that. While people kind of use microservices as a technical innovation, service oriented architecture existed 10, 20 years ago as well, and but just that the embracing of that technology wasn't that fast enough. And today, the embracing is fast and people are using it, but it is very, very important for business to actually break down a monolithic job into small finite doable jobs, and then writing microservices on it. There isn't a silver bullet that exists, at least in my knowledge. But I would say, even if it is to become, it is not going to be a technical innovation, it's going to be more functional and business innovation, to be able to understand what business is doing and break down into multiple parts.
All right. Okay. So the next one that we have is, if you need to upgrade your password storage algorithm, how do you do that without mass disruption to your users?
I think it's a tricky one because there are two school of thoughts today which are running upon. One school of thought is running passwords are passe. How do you get rid of passwords? And the other school of thought is running what you just highlighted, the question highlighted, saying how do you go about getting the algorithm around passwords to be more complex so that it's not easy to break. Let me divide the question in two parts. And why passwords are becoming passe is because there's a huge focus on the advancements in technologies. We all know encryption is as good as the compute power of technology is. And with the claims which are coming around quantum technology at this moment, most of the encryptions which we know, which are considered to be secure at this point of time, even if the quantum is available to be practically used upon for very, very small use cases, I think almost all those encryptions will be broken down. So this encryption based security, which has served us so well all this while, also has its own limitations. So that's one part. The second part is, how do you go about, so despite all of those challenges, we're not going to run away from passwords immediately. I think the question is saying, how do you look at the algos and enhance those algos and so on and so forth? There are multiple strategies which one needs to look upon, saying how can you do it. One of the ways how organizations have tried doing it is by creating opportunities, linking back with some kind of enhancements or updates, and that's when you roll out some of these new encryption mechanisms or further enhanced password mechanisms. But there is a change element which is involved. I don't think it's more technical issue over here. It's the management of the change which is the bigger issue over there. So again, it has to be contextualized. it has to be looked upon in the relevance of an organization or the use case which we are looking upon, what's the audience that we are covering, and then bring across the motivators to make sure that it doesn't cause disruption. I don't think technology is at all a change. It's the human element and managing that change, which is going to be the most difficult part. But we normally tend to find those answers by understanding what helps people, what kind of positive messaging should be done, who could be those change agents which will help us to get this going, and so on and so forth.
Okay, great. So I think we have time for one more question, and this is a very long one. For a real-time issue identification, resolution, and prevention use cases in financial industries, do we suggest using NoSQL database or relational databases, given there would be multiple issues and thus multiple updates, and the existing database being semi-structured?
Okay, I'll take this one. Very good question, whoever has asked this one, and congratulations for asking this because it is definitely going to take me a couple of minutes to set the background. See, the relational databases are great sources of ingesting data, keeping data, preserving data for transaction processing, not for information persistence. So information is best persisted in a NoSQL database as what it is required for. And a NoSQL database is nothing but a key value pair of the information. So the amount of checks the record would have to undergo if it is to be inserted in a regular RDBMS versus a NoSQL, it is going to be, I would say, million times harder to insert a record, given when you design a table, you say my table is number type 3 varchar or a character type 4, and with the primary key, foreign key, you put at least different types of constraint. Every time you define a column and a data type, you're actually putting that constraint that this table have these columns and these columns have this restrictions that they can only take this type of data in. You have created a table with a column like date and you can't ingest a character in there. So when you go and record instances in such a regular RDBMS, every time a record comes, it undergoes a massive CPU cycles of checks before it persists there. And when you do fraudulent, or for that matter, high velocity ingestion, these systems fail miserably. And hence, unless it is required for doing real-time banking sort of transactions or important sort of transaction where multiple people will be working on same record, relational databases are not very important. So that is the difference between acid and base. I'm not talking about the chemistry acid and base. The technology acid is, relational databases are acid compliant, which is atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. So every time you put a record in a relational database, it has to be atomic in nature, isolated and durable and consistent. While in NoSQL, we follow a base strategy, basically available, soft state, eventually consistent, which means that you never want to lose the data, but you don't want to be the last minute accuracy needs to be there as long as the data is coming in and flushing in. So the amount of checks that a NoSQL database goes through when it goes through ingestion is far less, and also the lookups are very fast based on the key because it's a key value pair. So I would definitely recommend for information flow like fraudulent transaction, kind of that you need to capture on how people are using or misusing these systems, and you kind of want to create a log of that. The log databases are best created in NoSQL. They follow a CAP theorem, so I don't want to dive deep more on that. It's like consistency, application, and partition tolerance, which is you can have only two of these three aspects for a NoSQL. So essentially, the answer is yes. It is good to use NoSQL database for logging kind of requirements. Then use relational databases only when you have real-time important transactions kind of systems. That is the larger message that I want to leave you with. Before I pass it on to you, this session was a great session for us to talk very deep dive on technology, I really want to, kind of invite you, the interested people, to kind of write directly to us, to Atul and me. I'm available at sachina1@kpmg.com. So really want you guys to send out, if you guys are interested to work with the Rockstar teams that we have in Lighthouse. So reach out directly to me or to Atul. Atul, you may want to share your email address, or we can pop it up in our slide. Uh, we're very willing to have deep dive conversations with you one on one, and if a career shift could make a difference to you guys.
I'll type my email in the chat box. It's Atul Gupta is one word at kpmg.com. So feel free to reach out.
That's the benefit of joining us early. You get the full full name in your email address.
Yeah.
I wasn't lucky so much.
All right, guys. I think it's 4:03 now, so we've I think we have to bring an end to this session now. But guys, if you have any other questions, right, you can email me those questions. I'll share it with our panelists, and I'll make sure that I get back to you with the answers. And now you also have their email IDs, so if there were any unanswered questions, you can share those questions with them directly. Okay, guys. So with that, we bring an end to an hour of wonderful insights and experiences. Thank you so much, Atul and Sachin and Team KPMG for collaborating with us, and as well as to all the attendees, for joining and staying with us through this 1 hour. Also, there's a small survey towards the end of the webinar, guys. If you'd like to give us a feedback, that will help us make necessary improvements in the future. Please fill that out. Thank you so much, guys. Atul, Sachin, there's anything you'd want to end with?
I think very exciting session, and really look forward to more such interactions. And we've just messaged, both Atul and I have messaged our email addresses. So look forward for talking to some of you.
Absolutely, and wanted to thank you, Vibhor, and the entire team for organizing this. It's been a pleasure today.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. Keep coding, guys. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good day, folks. Bye.